Here we go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another installment of Gatekeepers. Tonight, we are going to talk about Tolkien. I believe yesterday was his birthday.
I think it was yesterday.
He would have been 131 years old if he was still alive.
Man, wouldn't that have been amazing? So we're going to talk about Tolkien. How much Tolkien do you use in your tabletop role-playing game sessions when you're at the table with your friends, family, loved ones, people you can't stand, or, like us, playing online every once in a while, or, as much as you can tolerate, as the case may be. But we've got a half dozen questions. We got a couple of great people in the chat already. Bo, how you doing? Brian James, thank you for subscribing earlier today. I hope you enjoy the show, and I hope you come back, as often as you can. To my right or left, depending on your perspective, we have the one, the only Jade from Jade's Tabletop Tavern. How you doing tonight?
Doing great, sir. How about you?
I am doing great. I am supercharged with positivity for this new year. I want to do do everything I can to make the gaming hobby a better place for everybody who wants to game, regardless of all your weird, side things you got going on. Don't care. Don't want to hear about it. Just want to play. Hungar, glad to see you in the chat. I'd be happier to see you on the show Friday morning, but, I understand things being what they are. Real life has to, take precedence for most of you guys. Me, not so much, because I'm retired and I do whatever the hell I want. Below me, or below Jade, I should say, my little brother, Connell, the Cigar DM. How you doing tonight?
I am good. I had a lot of fun spending the last 74 hours of my life going through the Lord of the Rings, and it was an experience like no other. I recommend everybody go through at least once. No, just once. Just once. It's like reading We. You only need to do it once. But other than that, no. I think
once a year, I can agree with that.
Topic. Like you said, yesterday was his birthday, and there's a lot of his influence throughout this hobby and multiple other hobbies, not always on tabletop.
Good point. Good point. Also joining us tonight in the chat, we got Scott Clark, we got Flady, we've got the multi-gun man all the way up there in Canada, and we've got our good friend, of course, Hungar, hanging out. I hope you are home by then, Hungar. And our good friend Squirrel Hermit and Crafty Matt. Whoa, it's been a while since we've seen you in the show, Crafty. I will try to keep up with the chat. Jordan from the Gamers Den. Sorry. Glad to see you here again. You gotta hurry up and join us, man. One of these nights, you've got to be in the show. He's got a wonderful channel, as does Hungar and Squirrel, of course. You other guys, if you don't have a channel, let's make this year the year you make a channel. And first time on the show, a good friend of Jade and Connell. My first time meeting him. We've got Finn. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. Just first time in, a little nervous. Kind of trying to watch my language. Because
don't be nervous, man.
Yeah, it's okay.
There's only two reasons to be nervous. Because you got a hostile audience, or you don't know the material. And from what I hear from Jade and Connell, you are an expert on Tolkien.
No, I am not an expert. Believe me, there's so much more. Thing is, I'm just
more of an expert than we are.
An expert.
More so than
you probably have read it more. You and I think Scott, one of the guys in the chat over here. I think between the two of you, you guys have read the book probably 500% more than I have out of like all the books. So I'm fairly certain you know
thanks all for
this
having me,
material
though.
more than I do. Yeah.
James L is in the chat. It's nice to know Australia is still a real place and hasn't ventured back to the never never.
For those of you who don't know, James is the funniest guy on the internet. Our good friend and semi-regular guest in some other channels, popping in doing his drive-by humor. We've also got Scott Clark. I believe he's a friend of your guys. I've met him just on the periphery there. Gamers Den, real quick. By the way, I figured out a way to simplify us finding each other on Discord. Here's my username. Okay, I will try to find that after the show. Well, you know what? Maybe I can do it right now.
I will send that directly to you, there, Shadow. On
Yeah,
Discord.
I appreciate it.
Do the same for me there, Jade.
Yep, we'll do.
Jordan's got a wonderful channel, super polished, super informative, and even though he covers a lot of games that I don't play other than Pathfinder, he helped me out immensely in Bruce's game to pull some sneaky tricks. And what? Connell smoking the barber pole.
Wow.
That does look like to be a rather large cigar.
I call it donkeys. Well, you can fill in the blank.
Yeah, he likes certain things of certain sizes in his mouth. We all know that.
Understood.
I was
Understood.
never
I
gonna
mean,
say it.
bananas. I mean, I don't know, hot dogs, anything else in your imagination.
Fill in the blanks there.
Yeah.
See, Crafty, this is what I love about you, man. I do the same thing with a lot of books, Tolkien being one of them. I really would like to challenge everybody out there. If you've not read any Tolkien, even if you have, give it a read. Connell, he's already qualified because he's almost done with the Return of the King.
Well, I'm
But
done.
I'm actually
I got his footnotes.
okay. Those are really good too. I'm
Yeah.
actually reading an encyclopedia on Tolkien.
Oh,
That'll
nice.
be my Tolkien for the month. I found it at all places. I found it at Sam's Club. Nice leather-bound edition encyclopedia with a lot of cool stuff in it. I don't think it's really it says it's a Tolkien encyclopedia, but it's got things like Asmodeus in it. So I'm like, okay, not really pure
Yeah,
Tolkien,
you
but
gotta be careful with some of that stuff like that. I was gonna say for Crafty Matt, like, or anyone else, if your books fall apart, you can go to Office Depot, or I think it's Office Max or Office Depot, and they will rebind books. Like they'll spiral bound them.
Yeah.
Like if the binding blows on them, and it's actually not expensive. Like I had my my Shadowrun second edition rule book fall apart, and I took it there, and they spiral bound it.
James L. and Bo Paints Minis are on the same exact
Nice.
page. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And Bo
Sometimes it
wins
is.
the Coke with the Jinx. Don't forget the Silmarillion and the Unfinished Tales.
Unfinished Tales. Oh yeah, and
The
the things
Book
that
of Lost
Tolkien
Tales.
wrote. You know, I was gonna say Tolkien wrote other things like Gawain and the Green Knight. I actually have a copy of that.
He did a version
Farmer Giles
of
and Ham.
Beowulf. Something of Beowulf. I can't remember.
Okay, Jordan is being vague, but I get that when you've got kids like I do, you've got to keep certain information off the internet, and I totally respect that. Who doesn't want to buy more books? I want to buy everybody else's books. I
Well, I
am
said,
regularly
buy a book, but just because a book falls apart doesn't mean it gets put away. Forever.
Nope, not at all. I've glued more books together than I can stick a stick at, and I'm always buying books.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, I've even got friends of mine because I don't have a bookstore where I live other than a Barnes and Noble. I used to have dozens of used bookstores. Topic for another time, but yes, I can't get enough books. I went to my local library. It's the best place in my area, and I walked out with like 10 books, and at 50 cents a book for the Dragon Riders of Pern and some good Zane Grey. Yeah, I'll take it. Up, Connell, what's up?
I want to answer Crafty's question really quick. What type of cigar is it? It is an Asylum 13. It's called an Ogre.
If my son was here right now, he would have some words for you, and all of them would be, yes, all of them would be your Shrek.
Hey,
Connell, all I gotta say is mass suggestion, ogres. Think about that now.
I know. That's the reason why I picked it. Hey, I have to say this, though, on my behalf, since you want to bring up your son, who is also a fine Catholic. If cigars was good enough for Pope something the 6th, it's good enough for me.
Speaking of Catholics, I didn't know Tolkien was a fine, upstanding Catholic.
Yeah, he was.
I did not know that. It never crossed my mind. That stuff doesn't really matter to me. I appreciate when I see it, but it also allows me to get to know the writer more. So many writers I've seen pass away in my lifetime, and sometimes it's the only way we get to know them is externally.
It was Scott. It was Pop. I can't think of his Pope name, but it was Borgia.
Yes, Pope something. I remember him.
Yeah, that Pope. That guy in the funny hat.
Could you be a little more vague?
Oh.
So what say we get on to the festivities, such as they are. I've got a half dozen questions for you, fine gentlemen, to reiterate the topic. How much Tolkien do you use in your tabletop role-playing games? I'm hoping the answer is a crap ton. But for the first question, I'm going to start with you, Jade. What is your favorite part of Tolkien's work?
Oh man, favorite? I don't know.
Give us a scene, a book, a chapter.
I really like the riddles between Bilbo and Smeagol when Bilbo ends up in Smeagol's den finding the ring. I like the exchange there. I also really enjoyed the Battle of the Five Armies at the mountain. Because it was such an iconic scene in the books, or at least to me, it was such an iconic thing. The dragon had just been defeated, and you have all of these armies show up, go, oh yeah, we want what's in that mountain, and the dwarves are like, you can't have that. That's ours. You can go away now. So the scenes from The Hobbit really kind of set in motion a lot of the things I would add to my games, into the future. Even when I was a younger person, I wanted to have those moments of the battle clarity and going through all those scenes and actually being able to retell those scenes at the table. So I read those books quite a bit, not just those books, but other books. But those ones really stuck with me, those two major scenes.
Connell, considering you just finished the classic four, what's your absolute favorite part of what you've read so far?
I like it. Be easier to go with what I didn't like of the book. The parts I did like, the one scene where Frodo is talking to Gandalf, and it was basically 6 months before they took off, right before Gandalf got basically put in prison by the other wizard. I can't pronounce his name, and it was, why does this have to be me? Why do I need to do it? Why can't it be you? Why can't it be somebody else? Anybody else? Why me? And it wasn't for the fact that it was the poor me, but it was the strength of character that Frodo had to maybe not grow, because it was already there, but had to contain to take something that was poison. The ring is poison, and carry it for 17 months, and knowing that no one else can take his burden. No one else can do what he needs to do. That shows a lot about the character that the author was trying to put across. Everybody wants to say that Sam is the hero, and I disagree with that. My opinion of Sam is he's a whiny little bitch. That's my opinion. It was the person who has to keep taking the poison day after day, hour after hour, that is the true hero. Even if he slips and falls, he is still the hero of the story.
Well, Kyle, I'm really proud of you, man. That was an epic answer. That's something I think a lot of people overlook, but not my favorite. Finn? No,
Okay.
seriously, Carl.
Yeah, that was
like
pretty
the best
good.
thing you've ever
Actually, that was
bet
pretty
on.
good. And to catch on to his, and some might say Frodo would have failed unless Sam would have been there holding him up and behind his back, being his staunch good friend. So the one thing on is the epicness that he makes these battles, whether it's Strider standing against the Nazgul on Weathertop by himself, protecting the ring. It's Gandalf against the Balrog. Aragorn again, mouthing off against the mouth of Sauron at the Black Gates. Or in the Silmarillion, Glorfindel fighting a Balrog by himself. You know, it's the epicness of the battles. It's like the magnitude that he makes these stories. That's what I like. You know, it's like, you know, where it's just one person standing against like crazy amount of odds. You know, that's why I like it's the epicness of the magnitude of his stories and its little things, you know. Yeah. That's what I like about this.
He did it like nobody else.
Yeah. And his
made you feel it. Crafty is mentioning all of my other lesser favorite authors. Obviously, Zelazny's my favorite. He was a personal friend of mine, and you know that adds something. But for me, it's really easy. Bo touched on it just a moment ago. For me, my favorite part is the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. That is for me that is Dungeons and Dragons for me. Just, you know, mind you, I'd played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons before I read Tolkien. Everybody's saying you got to read Tolkien. And I'm like, okay, fine. And then I got, you know, through The Hobbit, no problem. I'd seen the cartoon as a kid and stuff like that. Read that, and then made it through the Council of Elrond. And for those of you who've made it through the Council of Elrond, you deserve high praise. And then the Bridge of Khazad-dûm.
Actually, the council wasn't that bad. Having to listen to somebody sing Treebeard's song was more of a torture.
But that's because you did the audio version.
Yeah, you did the audiobooks, dude. You know, back in the day, we didn't have audiobooks. You read them.
Yeah, I would never. Even the great old 1970s, I think it was, audio 20 cassette collection of Tolkien. I had a chance to get it. I'm like, no, I want to read the books, my own imagination, my own inner voice.
Yeah.
But for me, that scene, the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, the fall of Gandalf, the Balrog, all of that, the orcs, goblins chasing the troll, all of that made me love Dungeons and Dragons 10 times more than I had previously. And every time I think of it, it just, that to me is Dungeons and Dragons.
How are you saying that? Khazad-dûm?
Khazad-dûm.
See, then I must have been pronouncing it wrong because I was saying heard it as Khazad-dûm.
Different dialects.
The problem is we all watched a movie. The movies came out and then the audiobooks, because now you're going to get the interpretation of the person who read it, who did the voiceover, and you're going to hear it in their voice. And that's some of the problems I got with doing audiobooks. Like, I won't do them because you're now putting a voice to these characters. Like, and once that voice is there, it's there. And that's the reason why a lot of like cartoons, like you see those, you know, the Sunday morning comic strips that we all read. And some of them, when they were getting ready to be licensed to become movies or TV shows, they canceled it. They stopped it. So it would never happen. Like Calvin and Hobbes. That's why he stopped creating them.
Oh, now this is absolutely wonderful. I didn't have that luxury except for a few short early years. James and the Giant Peach, The Fabulous Mr. Fox, I think it was called. And that was about the extent of it. And I was then, you know, off to reading on my own.
Yep. That's all I was too. I was raised as an only son. So, and it's like my dad worked, my mom worked, and it's just read books. And you escape because I lived out in the country.
Although I did, and I will admit that
video
games, that was nothing yet.
The Dying Earth was audiobooks I recently went through a while back, with the cudgel or however you want to pronounce it. I don't think it was really meant to be cudgel, but maybe it was. I happened upon an audiobook that was phenomenal for those, but that's like the only time I didn't hate an audiobook.
I can see if it's a book I've never written and it's like, or never read, and I'm getting into it, and like say Colin says, you should recommend, and I've never read it, I'll get into it, then I don't have any predisposed thoughts of persons' voices and stuff like that.
Well,
but anyway, I think we're getting distracted.
Actually, because what I want to say goes along with this. His series of books, if for those like myself, and there are several others who have learning disabilities where reading is just nearly impossible, sitting down while you're doing something and listening to an audiobook is just as important as trying to read it, because you're still absorbing the information, the literature, just not in the normal standpoint.
I mean, I get it. I understand. I'm just trying to get, let you understand it from my point of view.
No, I get it.
And I'm going to caveat off of Connell here, because I don't have as much time as I would like to physically read, but I do also consume a lot of audiobook, mostly when I'm at work, because I can focus on what I'm doing and still listen to the audiobook, and it actually helps. It actually makes me more efficient at what I do as I'm doing it, because it gives my creative side of my brain like a focus to latch onto, while my analytical side of my brain is like, oh yeah, I need to focus on this. So I really enjoy listening to the audiobooks, and I've consumed dozens, if not hundreds, of audiobooks, sitting at my PC in an office doing work. And I've been very successful at doing both, listening to audiobook and working. It just kind of works for me.
I take that back. As I mentioned earlier, my all-time favorite author was Roger Zelazny, and I do have on cassette the 9 Princes in Amber, the Amber 5-book series, actually read by him. Unfortunately, I don't have a cassette player anymore, and I can't find them on DVD or CD or anything like that. But those, I don't even think I could listen to him now that he's passed away. But if you can get something actually read by the author, then I really can't think of a better way. But when it comes to like audio versus reading, what I do is I actually read while listening to guys like Jade and Connell's channels and other friends of our channels. And that way, that's I do the reverse. Pure reading. Maybe I'll listen to some music while I'm doing it, but I want to focus on the reading more than any other thing.
Yeah. I've tried like listening to like professors like do lectures and stuff like that while I'm at work, and I've listened to them, and I think I've absorbed maybe 25% of the lecture because I'm working, because I have to focus so much of my mental like faculties, like focusing on my work, to pay attention, that I just can't. So I just listen to music now, and that's good enough for me.
Scott, please don't listen to our channel, Double Speed. My son's already a squeaker. That would just be too funny.
Yeah, I might actually look for an Elric audiobook, because it's been years since I read those books,
they
the Stormbringer
exist.
series, and they might be phenomenal, because I don't remember how I remember like hearing the voice, but definitely it's like I might want to listen to those, because those Elric series were always great.
Because of
Michael
that,
Moorcock was one of the greats. There's a reason he's in the appendix in the Dungeon Master's Guide, along with Tolkien and all the rest. I'm still working my way through that appendix. It took me 43 years to get to the Dying Earth. Can you believe that?
Yeah. My favorite author is actually, one of my favorite authors, who's up there with Tolkien, is Fritz Lieber, the Fafhrd and Grey Mouser series.
Phenomenal.
Yes.
I still need to read that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, you do.
Because that's where the D&D rogue came from. It's hands down. It was actually said by Gary Gygax.
Yes, absolutely. Not Conan, but Grey Mouser
and
or
not
Fafhrd.
Bilbo.
Nope. Not even
it
close.
Was the Grey Mouser.
Yep.
As much as I love this
one of my favorite
conversation,
characters.
we should probably get to the second question there, Haas.
Oh, I know. I'm just going through the chat.
This is not the Hangout channel with Connell.
Ooh.
This is
No. I'm just trying to be nice to the people in chat and at least
I'm gonna have to
post their
read that
message
one.
if I can. If I
yeah, the
can't,
Gray Mouser. I've been
read it
trying
out.
to find out on audio. I can't find it.
No, because you won't
Swords
find
and
it as
Devils.
the Gray Mouser.
Yeah,
It's
Swords and
referred
Devils.
to as it's like Swords Against Devilry. Or,
Oh,
No,
well,
Swords and Devils
okay.
is the first one.
yeah.
I'll get to the list later, Connell. But he's right. I'm going to move on
Yep.
to the next question, which is not one of the
Ooh.
harder biting questions for the gamers, but just trying to get a beat on each and every one of you. And this time, I'm going to start with you, Finn.
Okay.
How has Tolkien influenced you personally?
It's hard to really think about it, it's just it's a great author. It just lets you escape, it's really hard to figure out. He must have influenced me personally, I guess what it is when I try to, like, when I run D&D games, I try to express things in magnificence and epicness and magnitude, and try to do description and let people get into their mind's eye. And I guess that's how it does that. Because I really want people to get into that mindset of, oh, wow, this is happening. And stuff like that. Like, I try to do the voices and get in there and try to explain each of the characters, But I'm not trying to explain things like the Cimmerillion because I really want my players to stay and not fall asleep.
Before I go to you, Connell, Omen, please tell me you are just trying to piss me off because I do not want to go back to jail. I swear to God.
Well, by beating up Will Wheaton?
If I ever find out, oh, dear God, give me
All
strength.
right. Well, now
He does a
Connell.
podcast, I guess.
Connell,
How has he affected my life?
or has he?
He kind of has somewhat the shadow of him. Maybe, and his work has definitely affected my life. I've been in a not so much in, well, even a little bit into the RPing section, but me and Jade and Finn here, and I said this earlier, are attached to the sport that we've been doing. Some of us longer than others. Finn's got both of us beat, and it is if it wasn't for him, the sport that we do would not have happened.
Well, maybe.
I don't think it's kind of with my
It
argument.
would be different.
It would be different. It's kind of like we have Narnia, so D&D could have still happened, but been a Narnia take, not a Lord of the Rings take. But I don't, because of that. It's his shadow of his work has definitely influenced my life through the sport, and when it comes to role playing, I don't. Yes, Bo. I don't run his style of stuff. I don't personally. I don't mind playing in it, but there's nothing there for me as a DM. From my point of view, I don't think I could faithfully run a token style campaign. I just it's not who I am. But I have been in other person's campaigns where I've literally lost my head over it in playing it. And I enjoyed it immensely, but it is the mixed race party I find to be more important when it comes to campaigns. Because if you want to do something purely just human, there's no fantasy, no what if, what would this be? It would just be, yay, I'm a human. I'm a human Monday through Friday. Why would I want to do this when I could be a dwarf, an elf, a gnome, a halfling, or whatever else your DM allows? Let you step out and try to something else. So I completely recommend mixed species party groups.
Dear God. Nice. Crafty, that's got to be a hell of an experience and memory. I hope you get to treasure that a good long time. My family was not into fantasy. They were more science fiction and more historical. So I was the weirdo of the family. How about you, Jade? You the weirdo of the family?
Oh man.
No.
Yes and no. See, my family was more about video games than books, but my mother would always tell me stories. As I was a child before I'd go to bed, and her stories were never out of a book ever. They were off the cuff, out of the top of her head, and they were kind of like my first intro to role playing games. And I kind of rediscovered some of my memories of that. In recent months. I'm like, that was my first foray into role playing, so to say, where she was telling the tale and I was filling in the blanks. But so, I mean, I wasn't new to Tolkien or new to the concept of fantasy. But when I first read Tolkien, I had a hard time because and everybody always over exaggerates that he goes into so much detail about the finest blade of grass. And the reason I now, in my, later years understand why he did that. Because 100 years ago, you didn't have moving pictures of the Alps. You didn't have moving pictures of the swamps, along the Amazon River. We today have the technology to see these places in our mind's eye because we have seen pictures of them. So when as far as how Tolkien has affected me in my life, and I have a better appreciation for authors who take the time to describe a scene in full text, in text detail. Like I can actually understand what they're trying to get across and see it in my mind's eye, not just because I've seen pictures of something like it, but I can appreciate it because it is, they didn't have that ability to go, oh yeah, imagine the Alps, if you will, because people 100 years ago couldn't just go see the Alps. They just couldn't. So that was, what affected me the most in that aspect. And that's what I've tried to convey in my gaming hobby as well, is, being able to lay out a scene with words and just using words. And I don't have to say, imagine, if you will, the wilderness of the Amazon rainforest. No, I can lay out like the giant sycamore trees, and I can rely on all the authors that came before, even with Tolkien, borrow from those scenes and then borrow the same sentence structure or paragraph structure to lay out a scene and still give clues as to what the players can find around them, because hidden within that text I'm going to give either contextual clues of what is in this scene that they need to find or figure out, or methods to assail enemies by using the environment around them. And I can do that because I have read all these authors who have done it so well.
Nice. That's part of my answer, so I'm going to leave that part for you.
Oh, sorry.
For me, having read what I've read of Tolkien over and over and over again, I'm absolutely amazed at the world he came up with. Mind you, the world of Conan or Lovecraft or Fritz Lieber or Moorcock are far more, let's just say, gonzo in ways, before gonzo was a thing, or the predecessors of gonzo. I always come back to the purity and the beauty of Tolkien's world, how that's what it was all about for me, is making a world that the characters are going to love and die to protect and always want to come back. This is a world that I made and my players don't want to leave. And to me, that, feeds my gigantic ego, I guess. But at the same time, it gets my players' blood pumping, and they become invested in a completely imaginary place. I mean, unless you go up far out, into infinity far enough, you'll eventually come up to Shadow's worlds or Connell's worlds or something like that, if you believe in such things. But for me, it drove me to make a world or worlds, because I've made so many, that my players will fall in love with, which, believe it or not, segues into the next question, which I'm going to let Connell answer first because I know it's going to be a short answer. Did you want to say something before that, Connell?
Well, as much as I enjoyed the world that he built, it wasn't, and I don't mean to be an ass with the statement. When you talk Ronan was definitely Viking base. Was
Oh,
Norwegian.
Rohan.
Rohan.
Rohan, yeah, I knew I was messing up
Rohan.
on the name.
What the hell?
I know.
Oh yeah,
But the
no,
horse
yeah,
people was definitely
yes,
Norwegian beast.
or Saxon.
Or Saxon. I mean,
Yeah.
his world, Middle Earth. If going by what I read of his idea when he wrote The Hobbit, it wasn't a different world. It was our world just several thousand years ago, where Frodo made it to New York at one point. It's so yeah, he made it. He as a world builder, he was brilliant, but wasn't exactly what you think. He was just using our world just a long time ago.
I mean, based on what I just heard from what Jade and Shadow talked about, and really Shadow, this caused a little like exclamation point pop above my head in the light. He built a world that was familiar to us, something that we could be comfortable in, and because he didn't create the world of Nuon or Lankmar or H.P. Lovecraft's world or wherever, because those were alien. You said Gonzo. No, it's those worlds were alien to us because they're very different and very just outside the norm. Why you look at Tolkien's world, which was called Middle Earth, he built a world that's very familiar.
And I think he really, he was like the pioneer of world builders. There are some authors, Lord Dunsany, prior to him, things like that, who did do, in fact, try to create their own worlds of imagination. But from my reading, I give him the credit for being the first person to sort of pave the way to all the people that came after him to create their own world, other than maybe a couple of people like Robert E. Howard, who was doing it I think a little bit before or simultaneous.
I think Fitz Lieber was a contemporary of Tolkien about the same time. And they're both in the 30s, so yeah.
I mean, we have Narnia, we have Alice in Wonderland, we've had other authors out there that have made worlds outside that wasn't. It was similar to ours, but it was nothing like ours. So, I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to step on anybody's foot with that statement. I've just been reading up on it for the last about 2 months.
So back to the question, Connell. How has Tolkien influenced you in your world building? Which I'm guessing the answer would be probably very little because you just finished and you don't do a lot of world building.
Well, technically, the one I wrote for you guys was could be considered a Rand on Table Breakers could be considered Token S. Anytime you have realistically, anybody that makes their own world since he became a thing can be, you could draw a straight line back to him. Once you have anything other than humans, for the most part. I mean, yes and no. Does he? It really just go back to what I said to the mixed race parties, because he did it the best. I mean, when it comes to storylines. And I like flavor. I like people to play anything other than humans because it makes the game more interesting, makes it more interesting for them, and makes it more interesting for me. Because you don't know if the dwarf has a lost kingdom that he's trying to reclaim, or the lichen tiger has a kingdom that he's trying to reclaim. And all this, it can be almost all a straight line back to his literature because Striker trying to become king, the elves in their forests or under and so forth and so on. It's just yes, I don't world build a lot. I don't get any enjoyment out of it. But in the modules I have ran, I do push a lot of my own influence into it, which you could draw back to him, in my opinion. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the only one.
You, like I said, you've just finished Tolkien for the first time. I'm hoping that as you move forward, you will find things that you liked and loved about the experience and help them make your worlds better. That's the whole idea here, folks. So I'm going to go with you, Jade, next, and then on to Finn with the same question. How has Tolkien influenced your world building?
So I've been working in just one world primarily, or one world setting that a friend of mine and I have been creating for the last 20 plus years, over 25 years now. And there's a lot of influences from Tolkien that we both kind of subconsciously pulled in. The grand battles between armies is just one influence, but our game world is, by nature of the stories that we like to expound upon, are epic in their very nature. We're talking like magic on a scale that would alter reality, and that influence actually comes from the wizards of Tolkien's world, because their magic is unexplainable. Like they don't cast spells, they don't cast incantation. Well, they have incantations, but we don't actually understand the rules by which they play, because it's never explained the rules by which they play, or are bound to. So a lot of my characters, especially like Tom Bombadil, for example, he's this character that just he is Tom Bombadil, and he is so immensely powerful. One moment, I've got dogs down here being causing a ruckus.
There's actually a theory about Tom Bombadil.
There are several theories about Tom Bombadil.
Well, the theory is that that Tolkien actually put Tom Bombadil as the representation of the United States during World War II.
Okay, I have heard that one.
This is before we had joined.
Okay.
The big mega powers that could have stopped it all.
Yeah.
Take care, Bo. We'll see you Saturday.
So the concept of Tom, though, for me was more of this like mentor type figure of, yes, I can solve your problems, but I am not going to, because you need to learn how to solve your problems. You have the power within you to solve the world's problems. You just have to put forth the effort. But what you are lacking is knowledge. So I always kind of include that one mentor character who is beyond reproach, who is so powerful. He could solve all the world's problems. He really could. But that wouldn't be interesting to him. He would much rather sit back and chronicle all of life's struggles, all of the people's struggles, than just give them the answers. So I always include that character. My character or representation of Tom Bombadil is actually Balthazar the Immortal Blue Time Mage. That's just been his title for I don't know how many years now, 2 decades. And he chronicles things. He is a time mage who just lives forever and can chronicle everything. He has the answers if you're willing to look for them. So that's been one of the biggest influences on my campaigns is, the grand epic beings that just are, like they didn't, nobody really knows where they came from. They just exist, and if you want to know more, well, you have to play, you have to actually go find them and ask them where they came from. They might answer you. They might melt your brain with the answer. Who knows?
Awesome. Finn, you want to take a stab at this one?
Yeah. Get some air there, Jade.
I'm gonna go put
that was pretty good.
Back upstairs.
Yeah. So So when I run games like, especially in D&D, since second, third, and fifth edition, I run the Forgotten Realms. I mean, I do it almost exclusively. So that's pretty much a created world, but definitely you can see the influence in Forgotten Realms by Ed Greenwood, from Tolkien. Yeah, definitely you can see that. I mean, with Elminster being an allegory for Gandalf, and just go through it all.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I try to put in, like, whenever I do any type of adventure, I add more of the ruins that people see. And I know when Connell, he's seen some of the place where they're traveling from town to town. When I run a game, they come across random ruins, just some ruin out there in the middle of the wilderness, lost, forgotten ruin. And those are the things that he added, in the game. Especially you saw it in the movies and stuff like that. Where they able to do more of the visual, just the random ruins in the middle of nowhere. I do add that. It's adding a history to the world instead of just people are hearing about the history. They could actually experience. They can see the history. And I guess that's how I use for So in a sense, it's like there's a lot of people run Forgotten Realms, and some people say it's got to be run this way, it's got to be run that way. You know what? Each DM, it's their own separate world.
Exactly.
It's my version. Some people run things like, no, it's got to be this way. I'm like, you know what? I didn't like that. I didn't like that story. That didn't happen. Or I didn't like that end. I didn't like how that played out. That's not going to be part of my world. I'm going to play it back in this part. And that's what it is. Like, I want people when they're walking from this town to that town or whatever to experience the history of the world. And when I use the epic people, like Jade was talking about, the epic, super powerful people, I use them as guides for the adventurers, to help them along, and they act like they're idiots. They might not know what they're doing. They'll trip and they'll fall. And sometimes I play with this and they'll just sit around and get tired because they don't. Yeah, they can do everything. They can do it all. But but they also don't realize it's not their job anymore, or it's not their job to begin with. They're there to help guide the next group of adventurers. Something about world building is I don't like trying to call the adventure parties. I like to use the word fellowships or companies.
Nice.
Because it adds a different mentality to the game, So if I'm running in a game, I try to say, hey guys, why don't we call ourselves the company of this or the fellowship of that, or something like that, because it adds a different mentality to this random gobbledygook of people, who might not normally ever talk to each other. And even as a DM, I try to influence that by using companies and the word company and fellowship.
I like that. I might steal that. For me, I've made a lot of worlds because I play a lot of sci-fi games, and as a lot of you know, all my worlds are in the same galaxy. Even if this is a D&D world and this is a Traveler world, you can fly a spaceship and get from point A to point B. And some people hate it, some people love it, but that's what I do. Tolkien influences that aspect of my world building in the fact that every once in a while I'll make a world, and I usually call it like a fairy tale world, a world that I want the innocence to be preserved and to last and not to get trampled by the ravages of progressivism and modernity and technology and expansion and all those things. I'll throw those things in there as forces of the bad guys, but I want the players to embrace the past, embrace the original spirit of that world, and try to preserve it and fight against these outside forces. So that one or two, three worlds I think I have where there is based on as much Tolkien as my players can stomach. That's how it influences me, by trying to make those worlds that are not going to evolve into the next typical era of technology and science and things like that. The worlds that want to stay, for lack of a better word, the fairy tale worlds. Now, the next question is kind of similar, but I want you guys to think about the tropes, the things that were uniquely Tolkien's spin on things. I'm not going to say his own original creations because, he was obviously doing what we do, taking from the books and things of the past and making them his own. How do you take Tolkien's tropes? How much Tolkien do you use in your world building, but still try to make it your own? Are there any things that are so, obviously inspiring you from Tolkien, but then you say, I'm just going to tweak it a little bit to make it my own, just as Tolkien did with so many things that he read about? Fan, I'm going to let you go again.
Oh boy, I'm trying to think about that because that's not question number 4 on my list.
How much Tolkien do you use in world building? Give us an example.
That was number 3. I think that's what we were at.
Oh, really?
Either way, it doesn't make a difference.
Well,
try to think of things that you Tolkien. I don't know. I think
just give us one. Just give us one example. If there's something that you've taken from Tolkien's influence and just made sure you definitely want that in your book or your game. And
I like how he portrayed the elves. I really like doing the elves like that. Or at least the high elves like that. Like I'll do other elves differently, but at least one group of elves will be like you see the elves like in Lothlorien, or in the same elves like like the elves in Lothlorien or Rivendell, or the Greenwood, elves like elves.
Damn, you took my answer. Jade, since you're laughing it up, same answer, or you
use the same way too.
So things that are mostly like direct influences from Tolkien. Some of my and I know we're going to get onto this question in a bit, but mostly it's my villains. It's my big bads. The things they want are things on such a scale that the world has not seen, or if it has seen, it's been such a long time that that knowledge is lost to history. And that's kind of Tolkien-esque as well, as the ancient lore, the legends of things that have happened so far in the past that nobody remembers the origins of it. Like I will rake through the things of that nature from Tolkien, from other authors as well. It's like, what ancient stories are in these other worlds that I could also draw inspiration upon? The One Ring, lost for 2,000 years. It resurfaces, and suddenly it is a huge problem, but nobody understands 2,000 years after it was created what its actual power is. Like, what can it do? Nobody fully understands it, but everybody covets it for some reason. So the ancient powers, the things at play are what I really like to pull the strings of, because it gets my players moving in those grand epic directions.
Okay, Connell. Think of it as how you're going to, instead of how you have.
Odd. The relationship with the dwarfs, and everybody who's not dwarfs. Dwarfs and humans get along fine. Dwarfs and halflings get along pretty good. Dwarfs and elves. Do you think I give a dead dog what you say, Sprite? Is some of the best interaction between two different races. Now, when you get a mixed party, I've been dragging the mix. I know I've been dragging the mixed party along throughout the conversation. I'm sorry, but it's kind of where I'm at with RPG meets him. It's the mixed party. I think is the most important aspect of it for the world that we live in right now. But if you got a dwarf who loves, golf. If you have a mixed party where you have an elf that doesn't exactly trust the elf and vice versa, and the two players can ham it up But at the end of the day, and at the beginning game, they're fine with each other, friends, whatever. But they're like they're going through something, and just the relationship that these two races have with each other. If I can find a way to flex it that way in my campaigns, I will drive that to my home. I will make sure they're not hating on each other, but the distrust that turns into trust, that turns into a true brotherhood, like it did with Gimli and Legolas, is absolutely amazing. I mean, it really, really is. So if I can have some of that if I can flex enough of the dwarfs don't trust the elves, elves think, for whatever reason, racial stuff, misunderstanding, um, then I'll drive that home. I mean, when it comes to all the races, humans only get interested right before they die, compared to the other long-lived races, elves and dwarfs. Halflings are too busy sitting at home, eating good food, drinking good beer, and smoking good cigars or pipes, depends on your wordage. The elves, depends on who you talk to, in other channels are off doing woodly things or off crafting woodly stuff. And the dwarfs are in their mountains saying, screw the world, we're going to build our tunnels, our castles under. And when you push them together, the only two races that have some kind of flex with each other, because they both are normally live roughly the same amount of time, is going to be the dwarfs and the elves. If you run the races lifeline that way, they're when they tap out. So going back to The Hobbit, with Oakenshield distrusting, everybody that wasn't a elf, or Gimli in Legolas, I think you could have a lot of fun dynamics in your party if you just flex that way, where the Game of Thrones, and not Game of Thrones, the Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit has laid down in front of you.
Kind of like you and me, right, buddy?
Yeah, you long-haired hippie.
So we ready for the next one? Oh, you know what? Let me throw mine in there. Something I always look back are like Jade said with the bad guys, but not so much the bad guys, because I tend to use other sources for my bad guys, but the monsters. Smog, the ring wraiths, and the Balrog are monsters. To this day, I have never been more creeped out, more terrified of than when Tolkien did it. Mm-hmm. So I try to do my best to do the same when trying to make my players afraid of something that's a monster. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. It's like the way I role play. Like if I actually have a spirit or a ghost or a wraith, I'll actually try to get it in that voice like they did in the movies, the Nazgul voice, where they're wanting something, or they just they're reaching out and trying to take it from you, and they're asking you to just give it to them. Kind of like giving up, instead of just fighting for it. No, I'll just give over my free will to you. That's what they're asking for, giving into the evil. It's like, if you think about it, it's just, or having the orcs actually play up where they're actually not just mindless savages. They have a society themselves and they'll talk to you. A lot of people forget that.
Now, there is a meme out there, which is some of a trope, but it's definitely a meme out there where
Kumbaya.
That's throwing me off. Where they basically discuss Gandalf's fight with Fire and Shadow. It says no, he wasn't telling them to run away for their safety. He just wanted to have all the XP.
He told them, "Go find the eagles. Fly, go fly."
Let's move on to the next question, even though the question after that is the one I'd like to ask right now, because I just, finished off with monsters, but and villains, but we'll get to that. NPCs. how much Tolkien do you use in character or NPC creation? And again, Jade, give me an example.
Well, so I kind of did give an example because I've got my Balthazar, the Time Mage, and that's kind of a derivative of Tom Bombadil, but there are other examples of NPCs I might use from Tolkien's works. But they're more like the grand leaders, the people that the party has to go meet or diplomatize with for either passage or for land rights or land usage for whatever quest they're on. So I might pull someone like Elrond for a noble leader or a leader of a council. I might pull inspiration from Theoden for a king who's gone mad. For because he's been influenced by the wrong advisor, and the party might have to suss out like what's actually happening in the scenes in the background. And so I will pull inspiration from not just Tolkien but from other sources as well for NPCs that I'm like, hey, I could really use an NPC like that. And if the party meets up with someone like that, I can make the character interesting and make the world feel like it's a living world, which that's really been the goal for my friend and I who've created this world. Is we want the world to feel like it's lived in, not just by the players, but by the NPCs they interact with. And a lot of people might go, oh, well, that's just like, drama club dropouts. Well, it is, yes, but at the same time, it encourages good role play. Because if the players have some NPCs they actually care about, they have some kind of anchorage to the world, they are going to go the extra mile as players to keep that world running, to keep it alive and not let bad things happen to it. If your players have no connection to the world, no connection to these NPCs, because the NPCs are stiff or cardboard cutout or just box text, those NPCs don't mean anything to them. So the players aren't going to go the extra mile to keep them safe. So and that's kind of what I use from all the other literature is I bring the life of the character from those literature into the NPCs that I place into the world. And not just at like shops or whatnot when the NPCs are shopping, but diplomacy situations or road meetings of these NPCs that just exist in the world. And then again, that's to kind of bring the living aspect of the world to the players. And you can actually take that inspiration not just from Tolkien, but from just about any literature source. So yeah, for me, it's I make my world feel lived in with my NPCs, and Tolkien was really great at that. His NPCs, even not the main characters, the side characters had so much life and vibrancy to them that they just felt alive, and that's I think why I enjoyed reading Tolkien was the NPC interactions, not so much the scene setting. Like, don't get me wrong, the grand vistas that he could paint in your mind with just words was amazing. But the actual like character interactions with characters that only had like one chapter, like they were only there for just one chapter. The interactions with them were natural. They just felt real in a lot of ways.
How about you, Finn?
Well, the main thing is like with NPCs, more I'm thinking about is the PC I run in Connell's game. Durin, son of Dugan. He's an inspired character. He is a combination of Aragorn, Thorin Oakenshield, and Dane Ironfoot all put together. And he's my fun dwarf character. He is the most rambunctious. I mean, he's a goody two shoes. He is lawful good. He follows the laws, but he is also mouthy. He swears, but he's outright 100% truthful. Like when he bucks in the room with the big bad evil and they're all trying to sneak, I will tell them straight out, I'm here to kill you. But he's also called for the surrender of a guy, and he gave the guy quarter and gave him surrender. to the party's dismay, they were not happy with that. But it's really fun. It's just I try to use that combination, but it's like the way I run. Like,
I hope this is like a joke.
Yeah, I've been reading the chat. I don't know. I'm letting it be because I'm trying to be nice tonight. Happy holidays.
I missed something on one of the.
Yeah, this is my one-time Christmas gift.
I can't really see the chat. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I don't remember ever having an interaction with Matthew before, but this isn't the place for that. I hope you're joking.
He seems to be. I mean, they're. Oh my
If I'm wrong, sorry, but I don't I'm just missing it. Maybe it's the blonde hair.
Is that blonde? I thought that was gray. Anyways, that's chat's problem. Let's move it on.
Yeah. Okay.
For me, it's the Kings and the Wizards. The way he wrote the tragic, the lost, and the nobility, and the weight on their shoulders, all of the kings, and the mystery of the wizards, the never being able to predict their next move and understand their true motives until the very end was just, for me, I've yet to read anybody who does that better. When it came to, like I said before, the Kings, and Jade said it too, instead of having them be cardboard cutouts, he made them so very, very important to the story that you couldn't help but feel something. Maybe you didn't like them, like the Steward of Gondor. You couldn't like him. You could only feel sorry for him.
Pity, yep.
Theoden, the same thing. You felt sorry for him, but then you rose up and cheered when he finally threw off, the spell of Grima Wormtongue, and the nobility of Aragorn, even when he was covered in muck and blood in the middle of battle, and everybody looked down on him for being just basically a homeless guy,
a ranger.
But deep inside, you could just tell there was something perfectly noble about them. And the wizards, Gandalf and Sauron, even Radagast the Brown. It would have been nice to have gotten a little more detail on the blue wizards, but
there isn't any.
Really,
there isn't any. They just disappeared.
No, there's nothing official. Like there's other stuff in the other books, the other tales, which are not official canon.
Yeah. Can I take a swing at this question?
Absolutely. I want to see what you're going to do.
Now, what was the question? I got lost in the chat.
How much Tolkien are you going to use in your upcoming NPC and character creation?
Well, I have a couple ideas on how I would do a Gandalf, but I can't allow players to play wizards. And there's the hang up I might have with a few people. I like a Radagast. I like the character, which is basically to me a druid out in the woods. To me that's all he really was. But I think there's certain characters in the novels that would be great PCs, even if they're slightly not the same. I mean, I think Arwen is overrated. She was only mentioned twice.
Yeah.
Once at the council and once at the end of the book. So, I mean, a great love interest for one of the PCs, sure. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, for the movie, it's for that. For the movie.
But
did you get to the appendix of Aragorn and Arwen?
I thumbed through it. I mean, I know what happens. because
Look at how many kids Samwise and Rose had.
Oh, they bred like Catholics. I mean, rabbits.
Yeah, and they named all his children after the members of the Fellowship.
I just think there's a lot of fun. Not even main characters. The bartender at the Dancing Pony is another one of them. They just walk into a random looking for something, and you got a bubbling, forgetful bartender that really is in his own right a key to a mission that they have to not coax out of him, but trying to figure it out from him. He's like, I'm supposed to remember something.
Yeah.
And just the patience that the players have to deal with.
I mean, he's so memorable to me. I haven't read the book in years, but I know his name's Barrelman Butterbur.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna leave the bad guys alone because I know that's a good that's where it's like, but I'm going with like the not so much the Formont heroes, but like the notable heroes. I mean, there's not here the characters in this one, even the Stewart. I mean, the Stewart makes such a great non-bad guy because he is fear driven. There is a red dragon that lives in a mountain 200 or several hundred yard whatever away, but he's too afraid to send anybody there, and he almost wants to lock the company into a dungeon to keep them away from angering the red dragon because he's so fearful of the red dragon. The steward of Gandalf, steward of
Gondor.
So I'm
Are you talking about the on the lake city?
No, I'm talking about the one who's running the kingdom, because he was a steward until the king shows back up.
Mm-hmm. Been steward for hundreds of years.
Right, his family's been running it, and he's so fearful. It's not exactly the same as a book, but he's so fearful of the red dragon that he becomes that kind of.
No dragon at that time.
I'm not saying that there was a dragon. I'm using a dragon or a monster of example. He doesn't want to deal with the wrath.
Okay, sorry, I missed that.
It's fine. It's fine. There's a lot of good NPCs. I'm not NPCs. Yeah, NPC characters in these novels that you can bring into your campaign that are a shadow of what they were. No pun included. Of what they were in the book. And when it comes to Striker, there is a line that said multiple times, "Not all that is gold. Not all that's made of gold glimmers."
Yeah. What's foul is fair, and what's fair is foul.
Yeah.
I will say this: Tolkien definitely influenced my character, my character builds and designs, and the characters I played when I first started playing D&D. And again, the very first system I started playing in was D&D 3.0, 3.5, and the first character I played was a ranger, because when I first sat down to play,
ranger,
I was I asked like, what is
we all
available?
Want to be Aragorn.
Right, everybody wants to be Aragorn, and that was my influence because I just read the books, I just seen the movie as well because it had just come out, I just read the books. The movies hadn't come out. I had heard about the movies coming out soon, but I sat down to play, and they're like, "Well," I'm like, "Well, what can I play?" And they're like, "Well, there's all these characters," and they went through them, and they got to Ranger. I'm like, "Ranger, you mean like Aragorn?" They're like, "Yeah, kind of like Aragorn, not quite because it's not quite the same." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, then I'll play basically an Aragorn type character." And so when I was basically told that you could bring to life any of the characters from Lord of the Rings in D&D, and everyone had like roadmaps of like what each character was and all the class and feat abilities and skills that they all had, I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing. And I just wanted more of it. And that was when I was first getting into D&D. So I would say, yes, it definitely had an influence on the characters I played at the beginning. I'm not as influenced by those characters now because I play more grandiose or epic power curved characters, more on the scale of Gandalf or some of the others in power and grandioseness.
I might be the odd duck. The first character I built by myself outside of Finn's The one time I got to play with Finn, well, I get to play with you a couple different times when I first moved down to Nashville area, it wasn't so much Lord of the Rings character that I wanted to build. I wanted to build Cole the Conqueror. Was my first ideal character. I'm like, this would be really fun to play. I think I can pull him off. I think I can get the personality and the build that easy. And so I guess I'm the odd man out on that when everybody else was going to the Lord of the Rings.
Here's the thing, Connell. Here's the thing. You just read Tolkien for the first time, and you're 38 years old, right?
39.
Oh, okay. I don't know why I thought 38.
I wish I was 38.
I'll tell you why later. I don't want to go into that now. But from this moment on, you now have the option, like all of us did when we were much younger.
Yeah.
We couldn't help it. There wasn't as much fantasy literature around as there is now. You can find literally hundreds of new authors, and every one of them will tell you they read Tolkien. They loved Tolkien, and they wanted to do what? Do their own version of what he did. Every last one of them. I would bet any amount of money that is in fact the case. Even if they hated Tolkien, they wanted to do it better. Because how many of us out there were in a game and that game sucked so bad that we wanted to take the reins and be the DM? Maybe not everybody here in the
gaming. That's realistically.
You were in a crappy game, or maybe you were in a great game, but you wanted to do it better anyways. And that's the same with all of the authors we have now. And since Tolkien, they saw it, they read it, and they wanted to do their own version of it. Because how hard is it really? How hard is it to imagine, to daydream, to come up with a world that's not the one we live in? Every single human that has ever walked the face of the earth has done the same thing. Dreamed of a world that's different or better, or for some of the weirdos out there, worse than the real world, and wanted to go there for whatever reason, to adventure, to explore, to get away, to escape, to vacation from the world that we're in right now. Because I don't even know if you guys are real. This could all be in my head, and you could just be figments of my imagination. I'm hoping that's not the case.
I know, God, Connell, really? Ugh.
Honestly, I could have got away with making a Tarzan character back in the day, 3.5 days. I would have tried. I just could not get my head around that one.
Yeah, it's called, it's like, like when I play different games in character creation, I try to pull from different things. Like for your game, Connell, I really pull from the Tolkien thing. I really want to have fun and really just push it out, and I've done, like, usually I'll do that for different games, if I'm going to play a character, but typically I'm DMing a lot.
Yeah, as of Shadow, you're the only person in this conversation that I have not played as I've been at Finn's table physically and virtually. I've been at Jade's table physically and virtually, and I cannot wait to be at your table virtually, because California is a hell of a drive for a 4-hour game.
Oh, Shadow, you're in Cali?
Yep. Unfortunately, for the moment, for the foreseeable, until my son graduates high school, he's doing JROTC, as most of you know, and he's in his first year of high school. He made sergeant, and will probably make lieutenant. Now that even though he's still in his first year, he's going to make it to lieutenant in his first year of high school. And he feels that if he were to go to a different area, there would be more competition than there is.
You have to restart maybe too, and go back through it again. Yeah. So what part, northern or southern?
Northern. Well,
good for you.
I'm about an hour away from LA, but in the high desert.
Okay, good for you though.
Yeah, it is. He's a good kid, and I want to give him every opportunity to do all the great things that he's done already. One of these days, I hope you get to meet him. Like I said,
we might have to drag Finn into a few more of these conversations if he's willing.
If I'm free, like I had to tell my wife that she had to stay on the couch, or or sequester to the bedroom where she's going to be on YouTube, and she's like on the couch.
She's more welcome to join and
she's very much
harass us
does
in
not
chat.
like being on camera at all. So I do not
She likes
mind.
being behind the lens of the camera.
I'm an egomaniac.
Yeah, our good friend Crafty's also in Cali.
Nice.
Well, one of these days we'll Crafty. I'm thinking more cigars because I am not really a drinker, but I will definitely one of these days.
I don't do cigars, but I'll drink.
Yeah, I probably drank more than any 10 people I've ever met, but I stopped because my son, when he was very, very little, not my drinking, but other people's drinking, as a 3-year-old scared him, and I promised him he'd never see that in me.
I try to drink responsibly, and I don't try to overindulge. I'm actually drinking to actually enjoy the drinks, not to get drunk. Getting drunk, if I can get drunk and get a little bit of a buzz, that's pretty cool. But if I get more of a buzz, I'm like, ooh, But I just try to drink good whiskeys and stuff like that.
I drank like a fish. I was in a score of heavy metal bands, and
there you go. Yeah.
So you
I have a friend who was in a metal band, and he told me about all the stuff he did. And it's like, ooh.
Yeah, and now I don't because I'm
just like you, Crafty. What you just said. Oh yeah, when I was in the 20s, I don't really know how I made it out in my 20s.
I can verify that. Not his 20s, but my 20s, I can verify that.
I really don't know.
So speaking of bad guys.
You called?
All of them.
How much Tolkien do you use in your villain or monster creation? Jade, if you want to go into the monster end, since you already kind of touched on the villain section, if you feel, and if you want to go into the villains, that's cool, but I'm going to let you take this one.
Okay. So I'll stay in the monster realm. I do like, my Tolkien-esque villains and their motivations, but I'll stay in the monster realm. I really, really love my ancient dragons. And I don't mean like the D&D classic, like 10 different varieties of dragons. No. I'm talking my ancient, like world-cracking worms. These things are so epically powerful.
And Calagon the Black.
No one. Yeah. I mean, they're so epic in not just size and scale, but in power and knowledge. And a lot of that, comes from the Tolkien dragons, especially like Smaug. Like, yeah, he was a terror to behold. He had one weakness, the one missing scale, sure. But the grandiose, him being such a grand beast, like Bilbo was in awe just at the sight of him, not just because he was crapping all over himself like, oh God, that's going to eat me.
He's going to eat me and pass me out, and he'll never even know he did it because he's so big.
Yeah, like he doesn't have to chew on me. Like, I'll come out whole. But he was in such awe of the dragon, and not just because he was, huh?
I said a whole skeleton, maybe. A whole skeleton, maybe.
And he was just in such awe of the, just the scale and the power of this this mythical beast that he'd only ever heard of in legends. And that is what I take is, those legendary creatures, things that should only ever exist in myth and legend. I like to bring them to life before the PCs. I'd like to, like, oh, we're hunting a basilisk. Okay, well, basilisks shouldn't be able to exist. They stare at you and petrify you. And then suddenly they're face to face with a basilisk and they're like, guys, we might have a problem. Jerry just got turned into stone. What are we going to do? I like the ancient myths and legends of creatures, and I think Tolkien did it best with some of his. Like, you had the Nazgul, you had the ghosts and the spirits, and it was in the Fens, or no, it wasn't the Fens. It was the Dead Marsh.
Oh, yeah, the Dead Marshes. Yep.
Oh my God! Like the descriptions he went into with the Dead Marsh, like. that would leave nightmares for people, and I enjoyed it. Like, you don't stare into the water for a reason. So I have used some of those items in my campaigns, and it has left a lasting impression on some of my players. Like, they're like, it's like, oh, that's a marsh over there. Did a battle happen in that marsh? Do I know of any battles that happened in this area? And I might go, oh yeah, there was an army that marched through this area and had a major battle. They're like, we're not going there. I know what you're doing. We're not going there. And so they, they'll metagame. You're like, yeah, no, we're not going through the dead marsh. You're not going to screw with us that way. Because they know the monsters I'll pull, not just from Tolkien, but from other sources as well that might live in something like that mire. So yes, I love pulling those mythic beings out of literature because, and I like to use the same descriptions from literature because, well, they're already pre-written. I don't have to do extra work because I am a bit of a lazy dungeon master, but it also it's something that some of my players are already familiar with. I don't have to go into like, oh, well, it looks like this, or, it does this, it has this effect. No, I just, start giving them the description. And they're like, it's like, nope, we're not doing this. We're going to run away. We're not going to get into a fight with that because we know what it is. And I think, like I said, it leaves a lasting impression on players, especially if you can do that well.
Agreed, 100%. I'm going to let Finn take this one and give Connell a little bit more time to think on how he's going to do it in the future because he hasn't yet.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, honestly, he might have done it and I even realized it. Being a player for my games,
on that, give him benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I probably do it in like through all my games without even realizing I'm doing it by crafting different villains, or sometimes a villain that a lot of people forget about is the corruption of the soul. One of the biggest villains they used in the Lord of the Rings was the corruption of the soul, and also in the Hobbit with like the dragon greed, and you got the just the corruption of the ring, and just the money and the loot
and the Palantir.
The Palantiri, which is what corrupted Denethor, and it messed up. Was it Merry? Pippin? Which one?
Merry.
Right. Yeah, I always get those two mixed up.
Yeah. No, it was Merry. It was Merry.
Right. Yeah, so it's like, Merry, yeah. And it's like, but that's a villain that a lot of people forget to use that I try to use if I have a game system that lets me really use it. The corruption, like, sure, you can just take one. It's not a problem. You won't be affected. It's just like, whatever. It just, you use stuff like this, like, try to do that slow corruption to people and get them to, and before you know, they're making saving throws. And then you're like, hey, so you want to do this now? Really bad. You can just, it's, turn people into their own villain where, then they can actually try to save them. It's always fun. Okay, it was Pippin.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just read it, but I get the two mixed up all the time.
I think Merry, even though his name's Merry, was actually the more serious of the two. And then it's like, just running the orcs like they were, where they can actually communicate and talk and give them their own personalities on their orcs and stuff like that, instead of just this mindless killing machine. And I'm trying to think other villains. It's just like, if you look at them, it's just like spiders, use that creepiness of the spiders coming out of the trees, the movement, and just, and just setting the tone. If you want to use that for like even parts of the villain or NPCs, the enemy is just setting the tone of the area. When they touch something, they feel the coldness of death. It's just, it's that whole thing is like, make them, when Tolkien, the heroes could feel, they could tell when they were doing something that was bad to them, was part of the enemy to use it. And I try to use that when, I try to use it in a party. If they're doing something, they would touch something and they would feel like cold. And they're like, well, how much cold damage it was? No, nothing. Because it's just they couldn't feel it,
I really liked the chittering of chitin as the spiders descend in the Mirkwood. Holy crap, I hated that.
Sometimes just making the players, as a DM, making the players their heart skip a little bit and getting the facial features to change, and to make them freak out and seeing them in like a super scary, and sometimes just the suspense, and let them get into the story, the feeling, of it, that's what it is. And sometimes, you don't even have to describe them eating children or anything like that. You don't even have to do stuff like that, but you can do stuff like that, even though that's not really more of a Tolkien thing,
Right. Well, the whole emotional range of responses we can elicit in our players is one of the most amazing things about this hobby. We're sitting in a comfortable space amongst friends, and yet we can, as dungeon masters, we can elicit every emotion imaginable if we just use the right words. If we craft the right sentences, we can get them and bring them from the absolute apogee of elation to the absolute most utter despair with just the right words placed the right way in the right time. The adrenaline, there are actual physical reactions going on in our players that we can, for lack of a better word, manipulate to make this game, this story, just
those strings
that they'll never forget. That's what this is all about, is crafting those adventures for them. Whether it be a railroad or a sandbox, we can show them something that they can't find anywhere else, in any book, any movie, any comic book, or any other media out there. Video games, maybe video games might be the only competition we have in that respect. But I just marvel at what we can do, at the table, if we just study the masters. And Tolkien was clearly a master, whether you're a fan or not. You can't argue the fact that he was a master with words, and that's why we do these shows, is to help our fellows out. Go for it, Finn.
Scott Clark talked about Boromir. Boromir, the corruption of Boromir, because he was despair over trying to protect Minas Tirith, but then he redeemed himself in his death.
One of my all-time favorite characters.
Yes,
he and the way Sean Bean portrayed him. There will never be a better portrayal of Boromir as far as I can see. Mind you, if I'm lucky, I got 50 more years. Hopefully they won't do another remake. Oh, wait a minute. They tried and failed, of The Lord of the Rings. And
no,
Sean Bean was...
it's Rings of Power. It's because they're not allowed to use any other books but Lord of the Rings and Hobbit.
And even then, they're allowed to use this much.
No, they're allowed to use the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, but they got to try to tell the story of the Silmarillion. But they can only use the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. That's the problem.
Yeah, they're not allowed to use the Silmarillion.
No. Tolkien Enterprises won't let anyone use anything that J.R.R. never finished.
Mm-hmm.
And he only finished
I've seen Rings of Power. I've seen Rings
of
Power.
I got my issues with it, but it was telling a story.
Yeah, it's entertaining.
And like I said before, I don't use Tolkien when it comes to most of my villains, but for the monsters, there are very few people I respect as much when it comes to monsters. Even my favorite, Zelazny, was better with the villains than the monsters. There weren't a lot of monsters in his stories. They were usually more of a comic relief thing. But the way Tolkien did monsters, I just... If I'm half as good as he was, then that's a victory in my book. So let's move on to I believe it's the last question.
Hey, my turn.
Oh well.
Oh, okay, fine. Sorry.
I never saw the Wheel of
How-
Time. Sorry, Bruce. So,
So
I don't know.
how are you going to use what you've read?
Unconsciously, I've always kind of done it. In a small sense, it's not the big monsters. It's not the orcs. It's not the goblins. It's not the wargs. It's not the dragon. It's not even the big bad himself. It is the small things. The ring. Such a small thing. I can't remember the exact line, but such a small thing is causing all the doom in the world. The ring itself was the best monster in the story.
Well, okay, so
Because
you say that.
hear me out.
More of a
In
villain.
the council, it was placed on a table, and all the other people that was affected by it in its area were start fighting because the ring was tainting their being because how strong the soul was in the ring. And doing small things like that. I mean, I can joke and say, yeah, well, with Sam being as close as to Frodo the entire time they were together, the all 17 months they did their trek, Sam decided he wanted the ring for himself, pushed Frodo and Gollum off the edge of Mount Doom and kept the ring for his damn self. But I'm not touching that. But we look at all the big monsters. We look at all the big monsters, all the spiders, the orcs, the goblins. But truly, the most scariest thing in the entire series was something hanging off a golden chain around a a hobbit's neck. That is the monster I like to use in my campaigns. It's not the ones you expect; it's the ones you don't expect. In Rise of the Rune Lord, I'm throwing in a small aspect called these books, and I'm not going to get completely in it because one of my players is sitting right next to me. But our overall guffin in the story I'm telling. Now, our JRR I could be wrong, but I think he understood that. He understood the small things is sometimes the smallest thing is the biggest threat. And when you talk about monsters, monsters don't necessarily have to be a living, breathing thing. Sometimes a monster can be an item, a cursed item that the fellowship has to deal with,
or an intelligent one,
or an intelligent one. I mean, I could say, what about Smog? Not Smog. What about Golem?
Smeagol, yeah,
He was a great monster. He was a beautiful, great monster for what he was. Yes, he started off as one thing, but because of the ring, which I'm using a soul coin because it's the best I have as an example, it tainted his soul and turned him into something else. That is monster-esque. It's not monster as a creature, but is a monstrous act. And I think in campaigns, could be the biggest drawing factor to your story. Because let's face it, if you're the DM, the monster falls when I want the monster fall. It doesn't matter what the AC is. It doesn't matter. No, I'll get into that later. But it doesn't matter what I lost my train of thought.
In a sense, see, I don't even think Gollum's even a villain or a monster. I think he's an NPC. He's neither. He's just a poor sucker who had to have the ring, and he's part of the guide.
But that's fair. But the entire book from he got out of being captured or let go, probably let go in my opinion. He was let go to hunt down the ring.
Yes, he was let go.
Yeah. Bloodhound. He's better to sniff it out.
Yep.
Right. But because of the ring, it tainted his soul so bad that he did what he did. And yeah, a monster, you can tame a monster. You can act like it. You can treat a monster. Even wolves in some people's campaigns can be monsters, the bad. But if you tame a wolf or have the ability to tame a wolf, you think it's going to work with you until it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
and that's what happened with Golem and the ring. I think the small things make the best monsters, and it doesn't have to be a walking, breathing, talking creature that you smack down with magic or a weapon.
Interesting.
Or a human, but we'll get into that later.
Fucker. All right.
Oh, you said fucker!
It's just because you're trying to bait me, man.
It wasn't me. That's great.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We're nearing the end of the show, and I want to get the last question in. Before the last minute. So, and I'm going to let you take this one first, Connell. How does Tolkien how is Tolkien going to influence your overall story crafting, campaign building at your gaming table from this moment on?
Yes, do tell.
Blankety blank, blank, blankety blank, blank, blank. Blah 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 blah.
I would hope it adds a lot. I'm really looking forward to this.
I think the way I'm going to do it is the monsters and the big bads will always be the monsters and big bad. That's how the story, that's how it is. But it's going to be the small things. One simply does not walk into Mordor unless you're a hobbit. Anyways, so yeah, I'm going to use the ring, not so much the ring as the ring, but small things like the ring to affect the party, and I'm going to take that from the stories or the musical that I just got done listening to.
Finn?
Well, I'm hoping. So great thing about this year is I'm really starting to be more of a. I think I'm going to take this 2023 as my year of creativity, and this being on this has actually definitely helped that. So I'm actually starting like a book club amongst my foam fighting friends or whatever. So we're going to start reading some Celtic stuff, some old Celtic stories, and maybe we'll pull up like I might pull up one of the older Lord of the Rings stories and make Connell read it again. But I'm definitely doing some creative. Like there's something I found posted about Gygax 75. It's like basically crafting a small area in 5 weeks. It was created by Gary Gygax. He put it out in 1975 in Dragon Magazine. And actually, I got a link and I can send it to you guys. I can send it to Jade and let him see it and share it amongst you guys. This is pretty cool because I saw on Reddit. Well, anyway, I'm taking this as a creativity, and hopefully I can take this to add this more to my games. And I'm definitely going to see Connell hopefully see some, because I'm running a fun D&D 5th edition game, Storm King's Thunder, right now. And we have my game Monday, and I'm looking forward to it the next time we run that, add more epicness to it, more Tolkien-esque type stuff amongst the giants and the different things that they'll run into. It'd be fun.
Was there giants in? Not really.
Yeah, there's giants, but they didn't really focus on them that much. But I mean, the trolls that they had in Tolkien were probably pretty close to what you would consider hill giants and other types of giants. So it's definitely think about this, just getting in there and just adding more descriptiveness, letting people know more about the flavor of the world, adding more characterization to the NPCs so they feel invested. And they, sometimes when I play an NPC, it's instead of just having the king say, the king gets up from his throne and goes over to the table. I say the king, makes a groan as he steps up, as he steadies his legs. The older king, as he grabs, and then they go, oh, this is an older king, or the vibrant king wielding, as he stands up, the sword gets handed to him as he puts it on his side, or whatever. It depends on what type of king. Definitely, those are things you need to be adding on to it. But definitely, it's I'll be sharing that link on the on creating a world on Discord. You want me to?
Yeah, Discord's fine. Is that like Dungeon 23 where you take you create one room of a mega dungeon every single day or something like that?
It's similar to that, except it's you starting with a town.
Okay.
Yeah, you start
Oh,
with a town
hex.
and you're
Yeah,
actually crafting
yeah,
a small
Bruce, that'd be
area.
awesome. I love hex crawls. Bruce is the reason behind it right now. I love hex crawls.
X23.
Let me look for it.
Yep.
Because I think it was one of the guys that game with Falgor found it. So
Okay.
Another really cool guy.
So,
but yeah, keep on talking. I'm
Jay,
good right now.
hey,
Move on to the
go.
next person.
So my campaign world, the Chronicles of Magic is what my friend started calling it way back 20 some odd years ago. What I took from Tolkien was an old world, and all of the stories that have happened in that game world happen in just one 2,000-year span of a grand story that's been happening for, in the game world terms, over 15,000 or more years of history. So I really like the old, ancient feel of Middle Earth. Like, everything there is old. Everything has been done so far in the past that nobody really remembers the origins of some of these ruins, some of these artifacts, people and places that have existed from time immemorial. And I use that in my own game world a lot, in my own campaigns a lot. Like, when a party comes upon a ruins, that ruins in my notes might have 10 pages of back history of, when it was created, why it was created, who inhabited it, and then when it fell into ruin, and then who took over after, at different times in history. And I'll have that for a lot of different locations. I could probably write a novel with all of my game notes, all of the game world notes. I could probably write a dozen or more novels. But not writing novels is difficult. That there are a reason why authors are authors, and I am not an author. I'm just a game master. But I really like that old world feel. It's kind of like that Star Wars, like the first 3 films of Star Wars. It's a lived-in universe. It's a universe that is seen its glory days come and go, and people are still living in it. And that's what I use for my campaigns. The world is lived in and has been lived in before the players got there, and will be lived in after the players leave the table. I've told, like I said, it's about a 2,000 time period, a 2,000-year time period. Like, the first story that was told happened to reset the calendar.
What
I just lost Finn.
He'll be back.
I think he might have hit. Yeah, he'll be back. But the first story happened and reset the calendar, and then the next story that came in much later was like 400 years into the future. And this is kind of like where my legacy game world is, and it just keeps going forward and keeps moving forward, even though the players at the table might change. Some of them might stay the same, but some of the players themselves will come and go, and they will still talk about that same game world years later and be like, yeah, whatever happened, after we finished, because they might have left mid-campaign. Then I'll explain to them what happened, and then the 100 years after that, and they're like, holy crap, I would love to get back into that world. And that's how I hook him, is this really lived-in, living, breathing world. And that's what I took from Tolkien, was the living, breathing ancient world. That's
a really, really good answer, Jade. I'm hard pressed to top it, but I'm going to go with what I know and what I've done in the past, and that, for the most part, is to pick and choose the things that I like, and the things, make. Like I said before, when you read something or you're in a game and you're like, I hate this, I'm gonna go make my own world, kind of thing. There was so much that I loved about Tolkien. I try, for the most part, to leave it there. I'm not a big fan of the movies. I'd rather watch the I mean, I'd rather read the books. I don't even own the movies. I own. I think I own the Fellowship of the Ring movie, but I I don't want it to influence me that much. I know that may sound weird. I try to leave it where it is and enjoy it and love it the way I do and respect it by trying not to take so much from it. You know, the little things that we've talked about tonight are just a drop in the bucket compared to the thousands of pages Tolkien wrote. And like Jade said, he's probably got several novels in him. I I suggest you get to the old typewriter and bang something out. If you don't, you're only doing yourself a disservice. And well, not only, because I'm sure it would be phenomenal. Um, you know,
Right.
we
As
all
Scott
have a
Clark
novel.
said, writing's hard.
We all have a novel in us, just as we all have, our own imaginary world, like I talked about earlier. And mine is very, very different from Tolkien's. The little things that I do try to take away from him are his way with words, which you can obviously tell from the way I'm speaking. I've got a long way to go. When I type, that's different. Like a lot of us, a lot of people I know on YouTube and elsewhere, they're much better when typing than when speaking. Donald, I'm looking at you.
He's not better typing. He isn't.
I can write. I just need somebody to go over it and edit it out, and it sounds great as long as I have a really good editor.
3 editors.
Yeah, here's
You
one
know,
for you and
first
the
one he's
other
got,
two.
the first one he's got to pay for the
You need a spell
the-
checker, then you
the-
need a
the
grammar
session.
editor.
So for me, I'm going to leave Tolkien where I like him best, and that's between the pages of a couple of books,
Yeah.
several on my shelf, and try to do what he, I think, would want us all to do is go out there and make our own world. Take the little bits that you get from him, maybe the large bits, whatever, but make your
Mhm.
own world out there. Do yourself the favor for your friends, your players, your family, whoever's at your gaming table, and give them something that's completely unique coming from yourself. There's there's so many great tropes from Tolkien, but at the ripe old age of 55, I've kind of seen them all, and I would like to see the originality that comes from each and every one of you out there. I know you all have it in you. Those forever DMs, those weekend DMs, those 50-50, whatever. Go out and make your own world and give us something just as good, maybe better. Who knows? I know there's a lot of people in the chat who have, other authors that they prefer. Well, what about yourself? Go out there and give us something. Even if all you give us is a module or a pre-made dungeon or a campaign setting or something like that. Maybe the narrative style of the novel isn't your strong suit, but you've all out there been dungeon masters for I'm guessing many years. Give us something uniquely you. I tell everybody, you guys all know that I'm a much bigger fan of world settings than I am over game rules and mechanics and things like that. Give me a world that's unique, that's different from all the other worlds out there, as much as you're able. I would much rather see a new setting than the next new shiny set of game mechanics and rules. To be honest, I really
Yeah.
don't give a crap anymore about.
Yeah, I think all the rules just make more power gamers.
Well, regardless on your exact feeling of that, there are probably right now 1,000 different role-playing games out there, and there are
At least, if
What-
not more. I'm not counting
Right.
them.
right,
Well,
right,
it's not like
and 8 billion people out there.
it's
we-
not like any of these companies are giving out law degrees so you can be a rule lawyer.
Right,
Yeah.
the world has already made the perfect wheel, as in role-playing game, and I don't care what what.
Rules
See,
light.
Dave's got his favorite. Okay,
Rules
instead
light.
of wasting your time of reinventing the wheel, reinvent the road. Let's see where it takes you. You know, not all of us could drive in a Lamborghini or the flying cars we were promised, but where you take it, that's what interests me.
Now, before we end, there was one little tad bit I thought was kind of interesting. Yesterday was his birthday, and I said earlier that he would have turned 131. Now, the reason why this number means something to me after reading the book was that was the same age that Bilbo was when he went to the non-dying lance. That was his age when he took the boat ride. And now
Okay.
he always saw himself as a hobbit. That's who he was a hobbit. And I like to think that wherever he ends up, it is the closest to the non-dying lands as it gets.
Yeah, maybe Tolkien sitting there smoking his pipe, sitting in his hobbit hole, relaxing.
You can count on
Bag
it.
end.
Yep.
You can
I think
absolutely
he
count on
created the Shire as a place where you could just forget all the world's troubles.
it. Did any of you guys ever see the movie What Dreams May Come?
Yes, with Ron
Wow.
Williams.
That movie's like, wow. Yeah.
That's
I've not
where
seen
he
that
is.
one actually.
You really should do yourself a favor. If you liked Robin Williams, in my opinion, it was his finest work, and it wasn't comedy. It was the greatest thing I've ever seen him in, and the greatest explanation of what I believe heaven will be like for each and every one of us when that time comes. And I like to think that people like him were able to create their own like when they get there. That's for Tolkien. His heaven would be the Shire, and I'm 100% certain he's there tending his garden, cooking
Now,
up a pie,
my
having a
question
party.
is, what was in that Hobbit tobacco? That's my question. Because it
I'm pretty
wasn't
sure.
marijuana, but it was something really good.
I'm pretty sure it was tobacco. If you know anything about things like hookahs and
Well,
tobacco,
No, if you know anything about JR, he wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't
I
have
know
had
it was
mind
not
altering
pot,
things.
but the way he
Yeah.
described it even the White Wizard, the White Wizard was the
Saruman.
Saruman
Would dull your
said
senses.
the tobacco, the Hobbit's tobacco has weakened
The
your
Hobbit's
mind.
weed. The Hobbit's
Weed.
weed is
That's
dull your
weed.
senses.
Yeah.
Yes, because enough tobacco smoke will mess you up.
yeah, it will. And well, it can. I mean, depending on how you
I mean,
partake.
I'm a smoker of cigarettes, but I can imagine smoking strong pipe or type of stuff like that type of strong tobacco.
Absolutely.
Now I know Jade's not a tobacco person, but from the three of us that do smoke, who here hasn't owned a long stem pipe at one point?
I have two.
Yeah, I had a clay one, and
I have a church
unfortunately,
warden. I have a couple of wooden church wardens.
I would love to get another one. The tobacco pipe I have, it's fine, but
I got a question. I know we're running out of time, but I got one question that just hopped up to me. Of all the characters you could spend one meal with, who would it be? Of all the characters in the Fellowship and in the Hobbit, I'll start with you, Shadow.
honestly, Saruman.
Nice.
Okay, fair enough. All right, what about you, Jade?
Oh man, that's a toss-up between Tom and
That's a good answer.
honestly, I mean, I would sit down to listen to Treebeard
Just
to
don't want to sing to you.
Fangorn.
Just don't want to
Yeah,
sing
I
to
mean,
you.
I would sit down to listen to the stories of Treebeard, but
Finn?
I would probably want to have
Oh,
a
me?
meal with Tom.
Amer.
No.
I want to hear war stories
Ooh.
the entire meal, like fighting glory epics.
I know you have, Dan. I know you have.
Oh yeah, I've seen the Shire. It's real. Yeah, it's in
Australia.
Zealand? No,
New
it's in
Zealand.
this Australia.
Zealand.
Where is it?
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
There's
Yeah,
actually a place here in Tennessee that actually built a bed and breakfast. Like the
yeah.
Shire.
It's outside of Murfreesboro.
Yeah.
I would like to spend time with the bear.
Oh, the Bjornings. Bjorn.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, Bjornings.
because I think that race, because it was a race of people, were really interesting, and it's the one type of characters that you don't see in most role playing settings. I think it'd be really interesting to have a conversation with them
Yeah.
because I know the human side. I can understand the elf side, the hobbit side. Hobbit side's Thanksgiving. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are, but sitting around the family, having dinner, that's the hobbit side.
Well, technically, the Bjornings or Bjorn, they were humans that were only the nobles could shapeshift.
Right, but I think that would be an interesting group of people just to get their point of Middle Earth from.
Well said, Charlotte. Well said.
The Shire is wherever your home is, yeah, and your home is wherever your.
Oh, I got a small bone. The entire until he died, he had a shield. Not the other human, not Aragon, but
Boromir?
yeah, he had a shield. He
Yeah.
never used it. You know what shields
No,
are?
yeah, he did. He used it a
Flocking
couple
arrows.
times. He
Flocking
used it in
arrows.
Moria. He used it in Moria.
Good, true.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
With that, folks, I want to leave you with Charlotte's last comment of the night. I think J.R.R. Tolkien would have approved wholeheartedly, and I hope you guys approved of tonight's broadcast. I hope, Finn, you will come back to join us.
Yeah.
Whenever you have the
All who
opportunity.
wander are lost.
This was I think a fitting tribute to a great contributor to all of our lives and all of our hobbies out there. Whether you want to believe it or not, somebody you love, some author out there loved Tolkien just as much as us. If you didn't, well, chances are they did. And
it's all over Dresden Files, so of course I have to agree with that.
So is the last name, but that's for another night. I hope you guys all have a wonderful new 2023. Let's make the best of it. And I challenge you, those out there who have not read Tolkien, pick up The Hobbit, get back to me. Until next time, folks, this has been Gatekeepers. Take care and happy trails.